First of all, this is kind of like a test for the draft party or the draft watch party, whatever you want to call it, that I'll have on Sunday and the other 2 days of the draft, Monday and Tuesday afternoons. And also opportunity to just go over the my MLB draft database. So let's get started. We'll start on the guide tab. So this is the first tab in the database, and it's just like a place to go over some terminology as well as some details that you'll see on some of the other pages. First thing you'll notice is this chart-looking thing that talks about grading players and what I look for and what my terminology means. So, for example, you'll see like a lot of, if you look on the player pages, you see like Henry Davis here is a 50 future value. You can go to the guide and you can see what that kind of means. The vocabulary, it means like an average player, which turns into a 2 to 3 wins above replacement regular, so like an average player. Um, Back end starters and closers. And I have that for each level, 80 all the way down to 35, which is my lowest grade. Um, then I also have grades for each of the tools, or some of the tools at least. So when we're talking about, let's go check on Matt McClain's good example. So we have him at a 60 hit, 45 game power. So if we want to look at the guide, 60 hit would be batting average. We're looking at like a 286 to 295 hitter. So a 280 to like below 300 hitter in the 290 somewhere. And then a 45 power, about 10 to 14 home runs. So a hitter who hits home runs somewhere in the teens, double digit homers. I mean, that also extends for run times. If you see those anywhere, you can kind of calculate player speed um, based off of um, their run times and how I grade those. So a player that can run a 60 in 6.7 seconds, it's generally like a plus runner. It doesn't always work that way for baseball. There's other factors. So sometimes home the first times are a little bit better. So we have um, a 4.2 home the first time for a right-handed hitter would be like a plus. 4.45 would be, pretty bad. Um, so yeah, and then we have like the terminology. If you see me, um, if you see any of my write-ups, I use the word plus, or if I write it somewhere or say it, this is what I mean. It's like a 60. A below average or fringe, means 45. Well below average, 40, all the way through. So just kind of gets you to understand what I'm talking about because, my grading scale and how I value things and word things is going to be different for someone else. So just so that everything is, uh, understood and there's no, I don't want to say disagreements, but this way there's no discrepancies and confusion as to what I'm trying to say or or when I'm grading players, what that means. I also did this little area here, just goes over some of the types of players that I have in the player tabs, which I'll go over later. So if you see a guy in gold font, we'll have a guy. So here's a guy, Hayden Jones from Illinois State. He had a gold font. That is a player that I tabbed as a preseason sleeper, so someone I thought could really break out during the 2021 season. Um, and doesn't necessarily mean that happened, but that's someone that I picked at the beginning of the year. I only did this for college players, so there's no sleepers on the high school side. I also did a piece on my blog about some sleepers early in the year. There's a number of them at each position. Usually probably going to be in this 35 area. I didn't really aim super high on that, although some guys you'll see like Justice Thompson rose up a lot. So he was a sleeper. Sean Gilliams, Bryce McGowan, they were sleepers, and they had really good springs, so they're a little bit higher up. Players in red, this is pretty self-explanatory, excuse me. Red font just means someone had an injury. Um, I didn't do or like focus on like too many minor injuries. Whoops. Do too many minor injuries and stuff, so I'm looking more at like long-term stuff, like a Tommy John or a shoulder issue, or so like someone we see here, Gunnar Hoagland. Most people know how to have Tommy John surgery, so he's in red. Glenn Albanese was out most of the year with an injury. Ryan Berger didn't even pitch this year, so those type of guys will be in red. Green font are just guys I didn't grade as like a 35, which is my lowest grade, but they're kind of interesting. They have some tools, they do some things well, they have a interesting background, something like that. So they'll be in green. I'm gonna add more of those guys because right now I removed some and I had to change some things up with my player pages. So more of those will pop up. Um, most, let's see. So there's one guy, Ben Rice for Dartmouth. He's in, let's just take a look at his baseball reference page. He's actually playing on the Cape right now, and he's hitting pretty well. And he's playing a pretty decent catcher, apparently. So he's someone that's a little bit more interesting than a lot of the other 35s here. But I don't have a ton of information on them, on him, or a lot of these other guys. So they're kind of just interesting, and I'm not totally ready to put a 35 on them. So that's that group. Teal guys are just personal favorites of mine. They can be any grade, any position, any level. So one guy is Henry Davis, who I really love going into the season. He's a personal favorite of mine. He's going to go in probably the top 5 picks or so. Um, Easy person to like. But there's also lower guys. Wyatt Hendry is a catcher at San Diego State I've liked for a couple years now. Let's see if there's anyone. I still have to add a lot of these guys too, so there will be more. I'll populate these lists with some more of those guys. This one is not used too much. This purple font. That's this is like a designation for guys. I'm not sure if they're eligible for the draft or not. There's only a few of them. One is I don't even know how to pronounce this. Peyton Chanye, I'm guessing. His birthday is like right on the cutoff. My list, yeah. So it's August 26th, and I'm not sure if that is like the day of the cutoff or the day after. So I'm not 100% sure if he is draft eligible as a sophomore or second year player, but I included him in the database anyway, and I guess we'll just see what happens with him. Another guy was Maurice Hampton, who was featured during the draft combine a lot, but has been at LSU, and normally wouldn't be eligible to be drafted for 3 years, so he would be eligible for next year's draft. But the way they were talking about him, it sounded like he was eligible this year somehow, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm not sure if he's going to be draftable, but he's on here. There might be like one or two other guys, but I just wanted to highlight those guys so that there wasn't any confusion as to why I'm including them in case they're not draft eligible. And first, we'll go to this part. So this is just a link to my database from last year. Some of this content actually got deleted somehow. There's some players missing, like Dylan Cruz. I might have deleted them when he pulled out of the draft. There's some write-ups I noticed that were missing, and some other minor details like that. But pretty for the most part, this was my top 300 for last year. There's some grades and blurbs. Not as much content as I have this year, but there's some stuff there, and there's a bunch of holdovers from this draft and are eligible in 2021. So it could be cool to compare and see how things played out over the last year or so. And this part is this section here, player notes and links to stats. So if we go to the position tabs here, you'll see a little triangle over the player's name. You hover over the name, and here's a blurb on them, some information. For some guys, especially a lot of the pitchers, let's see if I can find someone. There might be, so someone like Christian McGowan, something I saw on a specific date will be under here. Now that won't be on the blurbs for my board, but this was mostly stuff for me to like remember, hey, on this date he was doing this. So there's some of those mixed in there. Um, those are available for anyone with the little black triangle over here. And the other part is the links to stats. So this is for college players. I'm pretty sure that every college player in here has a link to their stats from the 2021 season. And so yeah, so we'll click on Michael Carpentier. So this is another problem. So some of the links haven't been working. Or they're linking to the wrong person. So that's something I'll work on probably Saturday, maybe Friday, and just make sure all that's in order. Let's see who we got here. I'll just click on Colton Kessler. That one works perfect. So here's all the stats from their baseball reference page. You can see there's not a whole ton of information, but they have a lot of the summer league stuff. They show some ages for some players, some basic information like handedness and height, weight for some guys, and their stats. So that's useful. The JUCO guys are a little different. They're not included on Baseball Reference, so a lot of these are just going to link directly to their team's page, so their college's uh, website. So let's go to somebody else. Let's go back to McGowan's perfect. Eastern Oklahoma State. So click on the link, and it's just going to take you to their website and all their stats. Scroll down. Here's Christian McGowan's stats for this year. Click on his name. Every school is going to be different, so there's going to be a different level of detail. This is what this website has. Just something I felt like would be good to have to provide a reference, because sometimes JUCO stats are harder to find and kind of a pain to go through. So it's just another little tool you can use, just like all the other players, to quick link for some stats. So that's the basic guide for the first page. It's good to use in tandem with these player pages, so you can kind of just see, okay, 45 fielding, okay, we know that's a below average fielder. So it's just a good reference point in case you're not totally familiar with a lot of like the scouting jargon, like that type of lingo. Just like a good reference to have, so everyone's on the same page. Our next tab here is just the draft order. The first several rounds are a little bit different because of some of these bonus picks are mixed in, and there's some lost picks like the Astros who lost the draft picks and things like that, or some players might have lost picks like the Blue Jays lost their second round pick for signing George Springer, I believe. So there's a little bit different order in the beginning. So I have the first 4 rounds here with their bonus slot values for each pick up until the 4th round, and the comp round here with the Astros. Then here you can see order for rounds 5 through 20, and this is going to be the same order for all those rounds the whole way through. This won't change after the fourth round. And then next to that, I just have the total bonus pool for each team. Just a handy reference in case you're wondering what kind of bonuses each team can give out. If you see something in the draft where like, ooh, the Reds took, a really good or really highly rated high schooler in the third round, how are they going to pay for that? Well, you can see the Reds have the fourth highest bonus pool in this draft, which could give them a leg up on signing a player who might be a harder signability guy in that area. I also included just a little information on when the draft starts, when it ends, um, start times, and things like that. And then the eligibility for players born before 8/25. I'm pretty sure that's the date. Anyone born before then is draft eligible. And also on this, I highlighted the Giants picks in each round here. This is kind of a Giant-centric draft thing. I try to mix it up and make it accessible for everyone, but a lot of focus on Giant stuff, so they got a little extra emphasis there. And to follow that up, I also have a separate um, Giants tab going over what picks they have and the bonus slots for each pick. And during the draft, I'm going to be filling these in. So in case you're wondering, you don't have to go to the MLB draft tracker or Twitter or something. You can always just come right here, and I'm going to have those picks for you. And there's some basic information on rules and how the slots work and the bonus pools work. The MLB draft is a little bit more complicated, unfortunately, and money plays a very big role. So some of the rules are a little weird. These are little details for you to go along with the picks that I'll be filling in during the draft. Giants only have 20 picks this year. Normally the draft was 40 rounds or 50 even before that. Last year it was 5, but the Giants had some extra picks. They don't this year. They just have the standard 20 picks. So yeah, that's just a little page for people to reference, and just a handy tool I felt for any Giants fans following along. This guide I kind of made, you know, to be used in tandem as a draft is being done, or maybe even after, just so that like a lot of information's all in one place, and you don't have to bounce around from, this website and the draft tracker on MLB's thing, and you're looking up for bonus slots, you're looking for the picks, you're looking for scouting info. A lot of that stuff, most of that stuff, is going to be right here. So this is kind of like a one-stop shop for a lot of draft stuff. The next page is the big one. That is my final top 500 board. I've been expanding my rankings throughout the spring. Started at like a top 50 or top 100, and now we're at 500. So just going through, there's columns here with 100 players, each one, 5 columns. There's some information down at the bottom. So if you see a cell that's white, that means they're a D1 college player. This peach color means they're a high school player, and this like pinkish, I don't even know what you would call that, they're D2, Division 3, or junior college players. And then again with the red font, that's an injury player. I'll make that injured too. So that's just designating a player who has like a longer term injury, like Brandon Birdsell here. And then for this section, we talk about the arrows here. So a green up arrow here means they're future value grade here went up at least one level. If we look at someone like James Triantos, he was a 35 plus, now he's a 40. On the reverse side, a down red arrow means they dropped a grade or a partial grade. So Christian McLeod was a 40 plus last month, now he's a 40, so he gets a down arrow. And there's a bunch of those guys spread um, throughout the board. Now, one section I did not do this. Oh, I gotta change that. Look at that. We're missing a little border here. One section I did not do that. I did adjust a lot of the 35 plus grades. A lot of these guys I moved down to 35s. I didn't want like a million red arrows all the way down here, but there were changes. Just more of a restructuring of things rather than any change in how I felt about the players. Um, so nothing big there, just didn't want a bunch of red arrows all over the place. Here we see the plus minus column here, and as I write, that means how many spots they moved up since last month. So outside of like the top 20, I think I did 20, maybe it's top 30. Yeah, top 30. I didn't include anyone that was, within 5 spots. So a lot of these empty slots, they might have moved up 1 spot, 3 spots, 4 spots. I didn't want a million numbers cluttering everything, so I limited it to this like top area of the board where moving up a couple spots is, a bigger deal. So as you see, a minus 29, that means Thatcher Hurd. He was 29 spots higher in June. Plus 6 for Josh Hartle. That means he was 6 spots lower last month. He went up. That's where he is now. Zavala was a big one. Went up 92 spots. Adrian Del Castillo went down 30, and so on and so forth. A lot of these guys. So last month we only had 400 names. So I expanded to 50. So a lot of these guys, this column, there's just not going to be numbers attached to them because they weren't ranked. Vincent Sharpani was someone who was in the top 400 last month and dropped out, so I put his number here. But other than that, these guys, for the most part, were not part of the top 400, so they're not included. So that's the board. The only other thing is, if you look by the player names, you can hover over or click, and their blurbs will come up. There's a lot of players still missing. I got about 200 now. I'm going to try to get as close to 500 as I can by Friday. And so if you don't see a little arrow here next to a player you want to know more about, check back maybe Friday, maybe tomorrow sometime, and good chance that I will have that filled in. So guys, so no little arrow here or triangle, whatever it is. That means the blurb's not in there yet. But for a lot of guys, you'll see I do have stuff in there, and there's good amount of information. And if there's nothing here, for most of these guys on the board, I'm gonna have the full grades. So you'll always have that, or for the most part, not in all situations. I'm still gonna fill in some guys. I have to go through my last bit of notes on grades and stuff like that for tools. But for the most part, these guys have their tool grades in, so you have some idea what they're about. And then for their schools, for high schoolers especially, again, you have the little black triangle in the top right of the cell. Hover over, click, whatever you want to do, and we'll show where they're committed. Or for junior college players like Sean Williams, you see he's committed to Florida, and so just a nice little tool to keep things in mind. So you can see, oh, Jonathan Vestine, he's still on the board, maybe in the 11th round or something. And you're like, ooh, maybe the Giants or whatever team can get him. And then you see, oh, Vanderbilt commit, maybe not. It's a stronger commitment. So that's kind of just why I have it there, and just another useful tool I felt would add something to the board here. So that's pretty much it for the board. This page is something I just added this past update for July. So these were the final cuts from the top 500 boards. So these guys received consideration, but ultimately did not make the top 500 list. You'll see guys in bold were, well, first of all, they're all in ABC order, so these aren't in ranks. It's not in rank order by any means, so it's just ABC order by their last name. The only people who you could kind of say are ranked are these guys in bold. So the guys in bold, I believe there's 30 of them. I wrote next 30 here. They are like the top of the cuts. So these guys really like just narrowly missed making the top 500. So you'll see Dominic Keegan from Vanderbilt, Tyler Kennedy, who's a high school pitcher from Georgia, uh, Christopher Bonanal was catcher in Texas. These guys were really close to making it, but were like last second decisions, final cuts for the top 500. So if you wanted to, you could put these 30 guys at the top in terms of ranking them among all these guys. For example, for the outfield, okay, you can put Drew Baker and Chase Jens and Pena and all these guys. These are my top outfielders um, among this bigger group here. So each position is covered. Right-hand pitchers have a little bit of an overflow column here. Um, Middle infielders are grouped together, and first baseman and third baseman are also grouped together. The July grades tab is just going over some of the guys that change grades from June to July. So Ty Madden, for example, I had him as a 45 plus for June. He went down to a 45, so he's included in the college section. This is the high school section. And here you can see anyone in green means that their grade went up, positive grade change. Red, negative grade change. So Casey Opitz and Ari Samick, they went down this month, while Aaron Calhoun and Ronnie Boone went up. Same thing with the top 500 board. I didn't include a lot of these 35 plus to 35 guys. I just didn't think it was necessary, and it would just clutter things a bit too much. There really weren't a ton of grade changes this month in general. I just did the June update a few weeks ago, so there wasn't going to be a ton of updates from that time span. Plus, there really aren't games being played a whole lot, so it's kind of just last second decisions and like a last call on a lot of these guys. Or maybe you have someone like this guy, Adam Shoemaker, who really popped up late, so he got a grade boost. But for the most part, the grades stayed the same from June to July. So I also included, I had one of these pretty much every month, I think, just a position rank for position players. By each position, 40 players for each position, except for outfielders who are, um, I have 80 of those guys. High schoolers and college players are both mixed in, so you'll see Marcelo Meyer is in the same list as Tyler Black, even though Meyer is a high school shortstop and Black is a second baseman at the college level. So these are just my rankings per position. I feel like this is a good tool because it'd be hard to, track by position. Maybe you're like, ooh, who's going to be the best third baseman? The Giants haven't drafted a lot of infielders. Who are the best infielders available? Well, this is going to be like a useful tool for you to see, okay, well, if we're looking at third baseman, looks like all the 35 plus guys are gone, and we're down to Andrew Benefield as the top third baseman. Or catchers, same thing. A lot of catchers left. Now I can see, okay, Sam Prater is going to be the top one available. And, that's a little bit harder to do on a board like this. So it's a useful tool, not just for people using the guide, other people, but also for me to keep track of, you know, what positions are kind of, being ignored, or players or teams are just not dipping into that player pool as much. Um, Similar concept here, but on the pitching side. So again, this is high school and college pitchers combined. We have a top 200 for right-handed pitchers. That also includes any relievers at the college level. And then I think in the last couple of years, I did like a separate ranking for college relievers. I didn't really do that this year. I felt like it wasn't really necessary in the way that so many players kind of bounce between starting and relieving nowadays. It just wasn't all that useful. So we're just going to go with righties and lefties. And as I said, 200 for the right-handed pitchers, and we went to a full 80 on lefties. Um, Not much more to say about that. This is again just another tool. You could say, okay, a lot of pitchers went off the board. Where are we in terms of value? You could see, okay, all these 35 plus guys, they're all gone, but Troy Melton is still on the boards for some reason, or there's a high school guy like, let's see, who's a high school guy? Jacob Steinmetz. We're in the 12th round or something, and these guys are getting picked, but Jacob Steinmetz is there. So, okay, that's just kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in the draft, and you can kind of just track, where things are in terms of position, the stock at each position. And moving on from that, we go into the position tabs for college guys, and as you can see, this tab will just say C, catcher, first base, second base, all the way through, and then you'll have similar tabs but have an HS in front of, and that just means a high school catcher. So at the beginning, you have the college guys. That includes Division Two, Division Three, and JUCO players as well. And then the HS tabs here are at the end, and those are just high school guys, um, just those guys exclusively. On each tab on position, pretty much the same info. I've been looking at the catchers a lot, so let's just go to shortstops, college shortstops here. So you got the names, um, same as like with the board. Some of these players will have a little arrow in the cell, and that means there's some type of information here. Um, some of my notes will be in there, blurbs, those type of things. For the JUCO guys, if you go to their last name, it'll show their commitment. And again, we have the stat links here. The draft year for players in the 2021 draft kind of changed because players were given an extra year of eligibility. So it kind of messed things up. So normally, you have to be a junior, your third year college, to be draft eligible. But that kind of messed things up. So we have guys. Let's see if I can find an example. So, good example, Josh Day. He is in his third year at the college level, but he's still a sophomore because he was given that extra year of eligibility because of everything that happened last year with COVID. So the year followed by um, what class they're in or their eligibility is listed here, and that's important because it can come into play during contract negotiations where a player who still has eligibility left can hold out for more money because they know they have extra years at the college level to build their stock, or maybe they just want to win a national championship, or they're happy where they are at the college level and they don't want to go pro yet. So normally, like someone like Luke Waddell, he would be a senior and he would have pretty much no negotiation leverage in terms of bonuses. But this year, he's technically only a junior, even though he's in his fourth year. So he could go back to Georgia Tech for another year. However, he's also nearly 23, so the age, which is in this column here, is a factor as well. Um, the, the ages can be tough to find. I relied heavily on Perfect Game and the some of the player pages. Here, there's dates, but they're not always 100% accurate. You can find also birth dates on the college websites, but not always. Some guys, especially the JUCO level, I just could not find birthdays, so I did not fill them in. Um, I had to do like a best guess for some guys because I didn't have the exact birth dates to calculate, exactly how old they were. So it's like a best guess based on the information on perfectgame.com, which has their age in years and then in months. So Ryan Bliss is 20 years old and 6 months. So since 6 months, he's going to be 22. In reality, he could be like 21.07 or 21.05. But for the most part, these are pretty close. Um, I also double checked some of these, or most of these, with other sources like Prospects Live, Baseball America, and most of them were pretty close. I had a few alterations, but I'm pretty confident that they're within at least a couple months of their actual birth date. So use that as you may. Obviously, you want younger players, more development time, model friendly, all that type of stuff. Here, pretty self-explanatory. Batting, throwing. So either they throw right, they throw left, they bat right, left, switch, whatever. Height, weight is next. And we get into the grades, which, as I mentioned, is good to use in tandem with this guide page if you're not really 100% familiar with some of the terminology and the way that some of the scout grading works. I base this mostly off of what Fangraphs does. I feel like their system is very readable and translates well to my understanding of the game and wins above replacement and just the value of players in general. So this was like an easy transition for me to use Fangraphs method and just apply it here. So if you're wondering where I came up with this stuff, it's heavily influenced by Fangraph stuff. So going back to the tools, so you'll see a number here followed by a slash and another number. So basically what this means is that right now the player is a 30. We'll use McClain as an example. He is a 30 hit now. If you put him in the major leagues, he would be a 30 hitter, which is like a 220 bat or lower. So not good, but to be expected for most college hitters. Um, 30 is usually 30 or 35 is usually about the highest you'll get for a college hitter, at least in terms of hit tool and power and stuff like that. It's lower in the high school end. It'll be like 20s and 25s, maybe a 30 once in a while. But for the most part, on the college end, the better guys are 30s, and you'll see a lot of 25s, and then some guys who are really far away or need to do a lot of work, like Sabin Sabalos, was a freshman, is true freshman this year at the JUCO level. He's only a 20, which is completely understandable. Not a knock at him at all. On the number to the right of the slash, that is their future grade. So this is what I kind of expect them to be, or I guess you could say maybe their ceiling. Obviously, players can jump, take jumps at any time. I had like a 50 grade or 55 future grade on Kyle Harrison, who is a Giants prospect, and he had a huge velocity boost when after he signed with the Giants. So it's not totally like a ceiling because things happen, but you can look at it as like maybe like a most likely scenario or a best case scenario based off the information we have now. I expect Matt McLean, he can get to a 60 if all things break right, avoids injuries. He's developed well at the pro level, and he stays on. His body remains the same. He retains his athleticism, all that. So, as I said before, 60, like a 286, 295 hitter. Um, so that's what the numbers here in the slash mean. It's the present grade of the tool followed by their future grade. The way I'm kind of projecting them based off the information that I have now, and how I think they'll be used in the pros. Um, so a confusing area for some people is the power grades. So I just wanted to go over a little bit of what the difference is between raw power and game power. So raw power is more about is usually evaluated maybe in batting practice or the very highest power they've ever had in a game. So it's like their max power level um, that they show or that that they can get to. So somebody like Matt McLean, maybe he hits balls at a certain distance and has certain exit velos and launch angles and things like that that suggest 50 raw power. But maybe the swing or the approach in the games or their pitch recognition, whatever it might be, that power, he's only going to get 45 out of that 50 raw power. So um, the raw power doesn't translate directly to this section. So maybe if, hey, a raw power player, if they translate all that to game, would be 15 to 21 for average or 50 raw power. But game power doesn't always allow that to happen. So you hear about players who have huge power, but their approaches are so bad or they can't make contact that their power doesn't play in games. You can talk about like a guy like maybe I'm trying to think. Well, good one for the Giants was Steven Duggar for a while. I always thought he had maybe not above, not maybe not plus raw power, but at least above average. But I didn't. But the question was, how much of it was he going to be able to get in games? And for a while, it was closer to like a 40 or a 45 or even a 35. That's what it was looking like. This year, everything's changed a bit. But you can see, like with like an example like that, how just because someone has a lot of raw power, it doesn't always translate to games for one reason or another. And there will be more extreme cases of players who just the difference between their raw power and game power is pretty huge. Um, Trying to see if we can find anybody off the top of my head. Um, can't really think of anybody at the moment. This guy, first baseman from Arizona. So he can hit the ball pretty hard. Um, if he's somebody that people see in batting practice and they're like, oh, okay, this is like 50 or 55 raw power. But in games, it doesn't really play like that. It's more like hard line drive contact rather than a lot of the over the fence kind. So his future value grade for game power is only a 40. Obviously, that can change. Swing changes happen at the pro level all the time. We see it with the Giants, like Mike Yastrzemski and guys like that, um, where Justin Turner is a good example, where swing changed, and because of that, they're able to get to more power. So this isn't like he can't ever get over a 40. It just means based off of the information we have now, the swing that we see now, all that, this is where he is. For some players, I'm willing to project more and say, okay, this guy's a really good athlete. You know, he has a swing or approach that's similar to these pros who gained more power once they became pros. So maybe this guy I'm more comfortable with projecting for more power or more hit or whatever tool it is as a pro. Speed, um, pretty self-explanatory. I don't use raw speed totals, so that's why I said earlier that the 60-yard dash time stuff doesn't always translate to game speed because straight away running, we see it with sprint speed a lot on Baseball Savant, StatCast. Some players are really, really fast straight away running, but it doesn't play that way in like baseball sense where reaction time, instincts, the way even that a player cuts, when they're rounding first, going to second, how they cut on the base, that can make a difference in their run time. So there's more to it than just raw sprint or run times. So on here, I'm referencing their speed in a baseball sense and how it'll play during games. So someone like Ryan Bliss, I have him as a 55 runner in a baseball context, if you will. Um, somebody else might have 70 run times, but for whatever reason, they're an average runner. They're a 50 grade runner. So that's kind of my thought process on that, or the way I evaluate that. Most players don't get faster in the pros, so a lot of these guys are going to have a higher present value grade than their future value grade because as people age and they mature into their bodies, they slow down. Now that's not true for every player. Certain bodies, certain athletes are able to retain their speed better than others. So it is partially a guessing game, but for the most part, a lot of guys are going to lose about a half grade on their speed over time, with some exceptions. There's some guys, I'm trying to think, usually a lot of these first basemen or catchers, they slow down a lot because they have thicker lower halves, and they'll lose, 2 grades of speed, or corner outfielders, center fielders sometimes. So a lot of like the toolsy, projectable, lengthy body guys, they slow down a bit more. Or the guys with thicker lower halves can really slow down in a hurry, and the aging process can really come at you quick. Good example is Aaron Sabato. You see him now, you can see like how quickly his lower half filled up, and not that speed was a part of his game anyway, but you'd see that his body really, aged quickly and that happens to certain people. So it's a guessing game, but it's like an educated guess. I'm doing my best to get better at it. I'm certainly not the best, and for a lot of these speed grades and the future speed grades, I will rely a lot on, you know, more not like yeah, I guess more informed people, more experienced people, like people at Perfect Game or the guys at Fangraphs. If they're saying, oh, I don't think his he's going to be more of a 50 speed guy, well, that's going to mean a lot to me in terms of how I evaluate them. Because maybe I was thinking, oh, this guy's going to be a 60 runner and he's going to hold it. Well, they're saying 50. Maybe I'll reevaluate that. I'll weigh that um, a certain amount and maybe come back to that grade. Um, so a lot of the speed grades change a lot for the high school players because it's a longer development track and they're younger. So pretty pretty normal. Fielding. So these tool grades cover what's the word? They cover multiple positions. So a 60 hitter at shortstop is still a 60 hitter if he is an outfielder. These don't change. The fielding grade is different. Oh my god, I can't speak. This is specific to this position. So a 45 present value on Matt McLean, 50 future is only for shortstop. If he was to move to second base, it would change his fielding grade. Maybe you could say 55 or 60, let's say, if he was at second base. But these are positions specific, and yeah, this covers each position. Um, I I group the guys by the position, at least at the high school, excuse me, at least at the college level. I group them by the position they played this year. So Brady Slavens was someone who came in, and I had him originally as a third baseman. He played there a lot at the JUCO level, so that's what I had him. But you look, and he was primarily, almost exclusively, a first baseman this year. So I moved him to the first base tab. Don't have a fielding grade on him yet. I don't know if it's even really necessary with first base defense. I'm sure he'll be fine. Um, so that's how I group these guys by position, is how they were utilized during the season. So if you see a guy where you're like, oh, that guy's not going to stay at shortstop. Trey Sweeney, great example. I have him as a 40. Normally I'd say, oh, he's just a third baseman, which I think most people agree with. But he only played shortstop, so I'm keeping him on the shortstop tab, and I'll just put a 40 on his defense. It could even be lower than that, at least for the future grade. Um, but so again, just these do not translate to other tabs or in other positions. That's still true for outfielders. So obviously, there's a different skill set required to play corner outfield as opposed to center. So center field is just center field. Corner outfield is just left and right field. So taking Ethan Wilson at 45-50 does not mean he's a 45-50 in center field. And so that's fielding. The arm grade um, is more like these, where it translates over to the other positions. So a Henry catcher's a little different, so I'm not going to use catcher, but a 50 arm is a 50 arm at shortstop, in the outfield, at third base. Now, obviously, there are things like the way players uh, transfer and how their hands work and just the way they move and are able to make throws at different angles that a infielder how their arm is graded compared to an outfielder. So it's not a direct one-to-one. So if you want, you can kind of separate the outfielders and then the infielders, and then maybe you separate catchers on their own. And even maybe like first baseman, you can kind of just say, okay, maybe these translate to third or outfield, but not so much short and second. But for the most part, a 50 arm at second is a 50 arm at short. Jalen Battles' 60 arm is a 60 arm as a third baseman, as a second baseman, and if for some reason you feel like putting him at first, it's going to be a 60 arm. I'm sure it would be the same in the outfield. Catcher is a different animal. We're not going to go there. So that's the arm grade. Trying to think if there's anything else. So judging or evaluating an arm is not just their arm strength. There are other factors, like I mentioned, like how fast a player can transfer the ball from their glove to their throwing hand or throwing arm, um, how they throw from different angles, and of course, how accurate they are. So a good example for someone who has really good arm strength, Nando DeSatis at Florida State can throw the hell out of the ball, but his accuracy is not good. It's like a 40. Other players might have a 50 grade arm or a 45 grade arm strength, but their transfers are so fast, they're so smooth that it plays more like a 50. In the outfield, strength is a little bit more weighted because a lot of times you're, um, getting some time to just make a max effort throw. So you're not worried about transfers as much and things like of that nature. Accuracy is obviously still a part of it. Someone like Christian Franklin, I think he has like an average arm, but accuracy-wise, it might be more of a 45. A lot of times in the pros, they that is a skill that really kind of firms up as a pro. So you'll see the future grade and the present grade match a lot of times. At least at the college level, sometimes you'll see like some like guys who aren't fully developed physically who can add strength. Maybe they'll get a boost to their arm as they add strength. So, but you'll see like more discrepancy at the high school level as opposed to the college level. This tab is just performance. I only include this for college players. Pretty simple. How they did during the season, how they performed, and most of it was weighted on their OPS, walks and strikeouts, and power numbers. If I saw a guy with a crazy OPS and he has 10 walks and 70 strikeouts and 200 plate appearances, I'm not going to put a plus there. So those were the things I mostly looked at, were like the strikeouts, the powers, walks, and then the OPS. I also didn't factor in players who had really small samples. So if a guy was hurt and he only got 40 plate appearances and he sucked during those 40 plate appearances, I'm not going to give him a minus. Um, I kind of put it into a bit of a context, but for the most part, like Nick Kent, he is, he's still 35 plus, but you see, 720 OPS, not great. Only batted 230, kind of a minus. At least, for someone that's rated 35 plus, you expect a little bit more on the offensive side of things. Cal Conley, on the other hand, he gets a plus. Why? He had a 980 OPS as a shortstop and hit 15 bombs. Not too hard to figure out. Most of the higher ranked guys are going to be plus performance guys because, quite frankly, you need to perform to get ranked this high most of the time. Um, you're going to know for the most part how these guys perform just because they're being talked about as first, second, third rounders. So where this comes into play more is um, these 35 future value guys or these unranked guys or ungraded guys who like you're like, okay, Austin Gauthier or Cole Kaler, he got drafted by the Giants, 15th round. I know nothing about this guy. Okay, here's some notes. Oh, look. Oh, well, he doesn't have a plus. Let's find a guy with a plus. Tommy Bell. Good, perfect example. Tommy Bell had a great year. He gets drafted by the Giants. You know, I've only saw Tommy Bell a few times. I'm not putting grades on him. Whatever. He is interesting, though. Let's check. Oh, plus performance. How'd he do? Hit 8 home runs, 975 OPS as a shortstop. Good season. So you can kind of use it as a tool to like do a quick evaluation or get some quick facts on a guy and just to see what they're all about. Um, this can also work. So there's a guy, Tommy Sacco. He was a preseason sleeper of mine. I got tool grades on him. I watched him a ton at TCU. Great defender, but that's another thing. Should have mentioned that. The performance aspect is only really for hitting. Tommy Sacco was a great fielder the whole year. No question about it. Didn't hit. So that's what the performance uh, tab is talking about for the most part. So we look at Tommy Sacco, you see these grades, you're like, oh, okay, not great, but, and he was also a minus. See, what he struggled at. Struck out a lot, didn't hit for power, what have you. I guess for more like these guys who I don't have grades on, like Drew Frederick, I probably saw play once or twice over the last 2 years. He's 25 years old. I didn't really focus in on him, but he was a plus performer. Check the link. Sure enough, 11 homers as a shortstop. Obviously, he's 25, so take that with a grain of salt. But it's a nice little tool, a nice little resource for people to get some quick information on them and just kind of, get an idea for what these players are about. And I include that for all the college guys. And finally, the last tab are just links to different videos. Finding videos was tough this year. First of all, ESPN Plus does not make it easy to make clips. I mean, obviously, they don't want people stealing their stuff, stealing their broadcasts, so I get that. But at the same time, it would be nice to make little clips and stuff like that. So a lot of it was done through scouts at games. Keenan Lamb was amazing this year. Prospect Pipeline is excellent every year. Just people I follow on Twitter and on YouTube, and you find just doing Google searches. Just first of all, thank you to all those people that do that because it makes what I do so much easier and helps me evaluate guys who I don't get to see on TV uh, often or even at all. But with that said, so we click on or you just hover over, little thing's gonna pop out. You click it, it's gonna give you a direct link to the video on that player. Here's Ryan Bliss doing his thing against Mississippi State on April 9th. So that's the video. So those videos are really good. There's a lot of, the ones by Keenan Lamb and there's some other people I'm trying to think. Uh, Prospect Pipeline again, that's great stuff. 2080 Baseball, Prospects Live, Perfect Game has some good ones. I'm missing. Joe Drake has some great ones. Joe, you're awesome if you're listening. Kyler Peterson has some great ones. So just click on those, and they're different lengths, different things they're looking at. A lot of them are just links to Twitter, which are a lot of shorter videos. I mean, I feel like anything can give you an idea what the player is better than nothing. So this is Drew Swift. It's a 4-second clip. Just see him swing, see him run, see the body. And Perfect Game had some, some info on him here too. So I don't know, just felt like that kind of stuff is useful and it's a nice tool to have. So I included those. MLB Draft League has provided a lot of good content. I actually made some clips. They make clipping really easy. Way to go, MLB Draft League, for their clipping tool. I'm still getting better at, making my own clips and stuff. It's not something I have a lot of experience in. Let's see if we have an example. So here's Kobe Robinson, someone I really like, and this is a clip I made of Kobe Robinson from 623. It's just a short clip, one at bat. You can see him, you know, see how the arm works, see how the body works, things like that. I even did a little slow motion things. I felt like being fancy. Um, but there's only a few of those. That's something I really want to do more next year. Got to figure out how I want to incorporate that, but we'll see what I can do. But the MLB Draft League also, let's see if I can find a good one. Draft League, there we go. So they did a lot of these Twitter things for, like, especially for home runs. So here's Zach DeZenzo. Video quality wasn't great there. Let's try that again. So you click on it. Here's a swing. Here's a home run. If you've never seen Zach DeZenzo before, I'm sure most people haven't. It's just a nice way to get some video on guys that you normally, unless you're paying a lot of attention to a lot of these fringier prospects, you never seen Zach DeCenzo for. So there's going to be some video, get some idea of what they're about. And I tried to include as much of those as I could throughout the year. I probably could have done a better job, but this is what I came up with. Yeah, there's different videos for different guys. The high school guys, there's a lot more because these guys like Ian Smith and Patrick Eber and Perfect Game, they're killing it, for a full year longer on these guys. So thanks again to those guys. But the college guys, a little harder to get that kind of stuff, at least this year. So I did what I could. A lot of the pitchers have stuff, hitters not so much. So those are all the columns on the player pages. Pitchers I included, it's more about pitches. Same concept on here. Future is on the right, present value on the left. And we have fastball, slider, curveball, changeup, command, and fastball velocity. Obviously these change a lot, but I tried to get like their most up to date and the most consistent range on their velocity. So like someone like Kumar Rocker has been up to 99 and 97, but for the last couple months he's been really like 91, 92, 94, maybe a 95 is like the max. That could maybe even come down a little notch here. But that's how I did it. Honestly, these things change, and they can change fast. So there are guys who I watch pitch in May or April, and I haven't seen on a mound, or a clip has not come across my Twitter feed, or whatever. And now they're throwing this guy. Let's see. This guy, Max Alba, hasn't pitched since his season ended. He could be throwing 96, sitting 92, 96 now. I have no way of knowing. But this is the most recent info that I have on velocity and a lot of these pitch grades, and just these grades in general are like, I try to be as up to date as possible, but stuff changes really fast. Now, the only other difference for the pitcher tabs is role. It's not on the hitter tabs, obviously. So anyone you see as a starter, that doesn't necessarily mean they will be a starter as a pro. Same thing with relievers. It doesn't necessarily mean that Eric Sarantola, I'm projecting him as a reliever, or Spencer Schwellenbach, or Cops, whoever you want to do or talk about. It just means that during the 2021 season, they were a starter or they were a reliever. Will Bednar, 18 games, 15 starts. So I tried to do it based on pitchers who had an overwhelming majority either way, starts or relief appearances. So that's why you'll see a guys like, let's see, who we can find here. Hmm, not finding anyone. Jared Polin, he only pitched a little bit. He had 5 games pitched and 2 starts. So I'm not going to say definitely a starter this year or a reliever. I'll just leave it blank. JP Massey, 9 games, 4 starts. So I'm not going to get into deciphering which is which or when it's like a very close split. Um, that's for starters or relievers. So if you see an empty space, that's probably what's happening. Or we have guys like Ryan Berger, didn't pitch this year, so I didn't put a starter or reliever um, designation. These are the same for righties and lefties, obviously, and they're not included on the uh, high school tabs. So that's pretty much the college tabs. The final thing here is the on the high school tabs, I included their college commitments in a separate um, what's it called column. So these should be pretty accurate. Commitments can change. So if I put some of these commitments in when I was making this spreadsheet in March and they were committed to Virginia, now he's committed to Florida State, it might not be right. However, for a lot of these guys, I keep track of, or a lot of times just information just comes across. Um, and you see, oh, okay, wait a second, I thought he was committed to Virginia. Now he's at Florida State. So I'll change it. But for the most part, these should be pretty accurate. I would say like 90% accurate, especially for the guys at the top. Some of these can change. Some of these guys still don't have commitments, at least not ones that are like listed anywhere on Twitter or on their perfect game profile pages or prep baseball report pages. So it can be hard to keep track of some guys and find that information, especially if they don't have social media. But I did my best to fill in everybody I could. And for the top guys, they should be in there. The school tab just is the name of their high school. This is mostly for me because I like to try to remember the names of high schools so I can kind of be like, oh, let's see, Malvern Prep. Okay, I know that high school. This guy went there in 2018. Or IMG Academy, they have like 10 guys every year in the draft. Here's another one. Oh, these guys are teammates. There's Thousand Oaks. Chase Serra is very, high level, uh, what's it called? High school. So it's just something more for me to remember where different players went to high school and kind of get used to um, some of these names so I remember them in the future. And this is just the state where the player's from. Now, some of these are weird. What I mean by that, so um, like a player might be from New York. I saw that. I've seen this a couple times. I think Carlos Pena Yeah. So like this school, Salisbury, is in Connecticut, which is why I changed it to Connecticut. But if you look at like his perfect game profile, it says New York. So maybe Carlos Pena was born there, but he goes to a school in Connecticut. For him, I changed it. But there's probably some guys mixed in here where the school they're going to is different than where they were actually born. So the state is not necessarily, the school might not be in that state, but it's not terribly important regardless. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up. This was just mostly a test for my watch party. I will have my webcam going. I don't know if that really adds anything, but why not, right? It's the draft. It's like this is basically my Christmas, so, or my birthday. This is bigger than my birthday. So this was mostly just a test, and for anyone interested in understanding a little bit more about the board or my draft database in general, and so that's pretty much what I was doing there. So thanks to anyone who decided to watch, and if you have time, feel free to jump into the watch party. I'll be going all 3 days of the draft, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Um, I'm going to be messing around and following it regardless if you come in or not, but feel free to drop in. Giants make a pick and you want to talk about it or see what I have to say, feel free to leave right after. It doesn't bother me. I'm going to be chilling either way. So, hope to see you there. If not, hope things are going well for you and you can enjoy the draft and, you know, I'll talk to you guys at some other time, Twitter, whatever. I'm always around, talk ball, so message me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is SF Draft Talk or at Brian underscore Recca, RECCA. Like I said, always interested in talking baseball, so don't hesitate to send me a tweet or a DM or whatever. So yeah, that's it. Thanks again. I will talk to you guys in the future. Take care, guys.